the offensive line coach, John Benton, is leaving, and he's now the offensive line coach / run game coordinator for the Jets. Vish, what do you think of this?
I think it's a good hire for Mike LaFleur, bring a guy who's been around the league for years, a veteran guy that's going to help instill this run game. And, offensive line coaches usually play a big part in the NFL in the run schemes and all of that teams use. And obviously, Mike LaFleur wants to run this Shanahan run game. And if you're not being able to bring Kyle, if you're not able to bring Mike McDaniel, he's probably the next best person to bring. So I think it's a good hire for the Jets, but I don't think it really affects the 49ers. If you hear Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan talk about offensive line coaches, even in Washington, they mentioned Chris Forster, that he was a really good coach and that they respect him a lot. And he had that issue in Miami that's pretty bad. So I don't know if he's gotten over that problem and all of that. But I think if you look at the 49ers from a coaching perspective, yeah, Benton's a pretty good coach, but with Forrester coming in, I don't think that there's going to be much of a miss.
I don't even know how good of a coach John Benton is. I understand the value he holds to the Jets. You laid that out perfectly. But to me, I mean, he was part of the problem here with the Niners. They do run block well, but I mean, Mike McGlinchey hasn't gotten better under John Benton. So I got to wonder. And so I feel like losing him from the Niners perspective, not a big deal. But what they did is they promoted Chris Forster, who everyone knows what happened with him in Miami. We don't have to say it again, but look it up if you don't know. He's been around the league a long time. But again, he was on this staff last year. He was part of the problem along with Benton. So keep Forster, that's fine. But what I would think the Niners should do is bring in someone else. If they had 2 offensive line coaches last year, bring in another one to help Chris Forster, because it seemed like they need an outside element to make this work, because that was the worst position group on the team last year.
I actually disagree there. I think that the offensive line coaching has actually been quite okay. They've had a lot of moving parts in their offensive line, and a lot of guys who are less than in terms of their talent, in terms of where they were drafted, have to play a lot of snaps for them, be it a Daniel Brunskill, be it a Ben Garland, who was a defensive lineman when he started in the NFL, Colton McKivitz, who they just picked in the 5th round, and I think those guys have done okay. I think McGlinchey is kind of the sore thumb that really sticks out, because he was drafted 9th overall, and he had an okay season in 2019. Joe Staley retires. You're hoping McGlinchey takes the next step, and he didn't take the next step as a pass protector this year. He got better as a run blocker, but he was still struggling in pass protection. So I think maybe they could bring in, like they brought in a pass rush specialist, maybe a pass blocking specialist or something like that. But
bring in someone else. That's what I'm saying, man. I think you had 2 offensive line coaches last year. The 2 of them couldn't figure out the solutions to the problem. You lost one. Bring in one more. And again, I keep mentioning the guy, but he used to be with the Niners. He was with Jacksonville last year. George Warhop, he's available, I believe. I believe he's worked with Chris Forster before they know each other. Be a really sensible hire for the Niners. Just bring in someone with a fresh set of eyes to look at this issue, because maybe it's not Chris Forster's problem that Mike McGlinchey's technique has eroded the last few years, but it has. I mean, when you watch him now, he doesn't punch. He tries to catch. I don't know what that is, and it's not what Chris Forster and John Benton are teaching, but whatever they're trying to teach, it's not translating. To McGlinchey in particular, I don't know what technique he's using, so bring in someone else who can deliver the message another way. That's all I'm saying.
Maybe.
And keep Forster, that's fine.
Sure, but ultimately, regarding Benton, I don't think that the loss of him is going to be that much of a problem.
It might be good.
I think the thing I do want to just dispel is that I think you and Jason touched on this on your show, I think Saturday, and I wanted to touch on it further, is that I think fans get too attached to these names. Like, oh, Adam Peters, he's really good, right? Oh, or some wide receivers coach or some linebackers coach. They get really attached to expecting this guy to be really good. And, that guy might be really good at his role. But ultimately, when it's the head coach, it's the GM, as long as you're not losing those guys, the position.
And from a fan's perspective, it's just the personnel guy you've heard of because he's on the team you root for. How many personnel guys do you know? And how do you differentiate them? How many offensive line coaches have you heard of?
Exactly.
How do you rank them? What's their PFF scores?
Right. Like, I think that Jim Harbaugh had two, right? Tim Drevno and
That's right.
Mike Solari. And
That's right.
I guess, and I mean, people didn't react in any type of way when Tim Drevno left with Jim Harbaugh and Mike Solari. I mean, so those types of things, or Tim Drevno, I think he got a different job in
you went to USC.
2012,
yeah.
right?
That's right.
So there was that. But you know what? Ultimately, I think that it's as long as Kyle Shanahan is there, and as long as, I guess, Kyle Shanahan is there, it doesn't matter if John Benton leaves or Mike LaFleur leaves.
All I want to say before we move on to the next guy is, to me, it's not a bad thing for the 49ers, and it actually is an opportunity for them to improve that position group. I don't know that just promoting Chris Forster improves it. It might, but I think now you got an opening, you got a vacancy, you got some money you can spend to bring in another guy who works well with Chris Forster. I feel like it's an opportunity. It's a good thing that they lost him. I was saying as my official role as quality control, I said fire that guy. So the fact that they didn't have to fire him and Robert Saleh wanted him, good. And if the Jets are looking, hey, you got a good guy too, I guess.